Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to Simply the Best Rock Albums, episode number 2. There was a first episode. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. But in the world of rock, there's some amazing, stellar, standout albums. But the term rock itself can mean so many different things. And the good thing is there's genres to delineate those styles so that when someone says rock, we know what they're talking about. And for this particular episode, I'm going to be running through 5 albums that are simply the best in their respective genres. Now, before we dive into that, if you are new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also, leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you're going to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of rock, just like this was simply the best rock albums. So for the first episode that I did, we covered general rock, hard rock, arena rock, melodic rock, and progressive rock. Now we're going to dive into 5 more genres in the world of rock. First one kicking off, psychedelic rock. Jefferson Airplane's Surrealistic Pillow from 1967, their second studio album together. It was the first album that featured Grace Slick on vocals and also Spencer Dryden on drums. The album itself would peak at number 3 on the Billboard 200 album chart and would be certified platinum for 1 million in sales. Interestingly, when Grace Slick joined the band, she actually brought with her 2 songs that would heavily influence the band, but also influence the psychedelic rock movement as a whole. Somebody to Love and White Rabbit, both of which were actually written by her brother Darby Slick and came from the previous band they were both in, The Great Society. Imagine if they had been the ones to come out with those. What could have been different. The album is a fusion of folk and psychedelic music and builds on things that were going on at the time from bands like the Byrds, the Yardbirds, the Beatles, and a number of other groups like that, but taking it in a new direction, that idea of what became the psychedelic rock movement. And, beyond that, there's some real classic songs on this album. Of course, the 2 that I mentioned, Somebody to Love and White Rabbit. But there's also the song Today, 3/5 a Mile in 10 Seconds, Embryonic Journey, and Plastic Fantastic Lover, which is one of the reasons I think this album is so great. The consistency of material on this all the way throughout says a lot. It is a stellar album that consistently makes, top 100, 200, top 500 albums of all times, those kinds of lists, which again, I think also just support the idea of how good the album is all these years later. And again, why I am selecting this as simply the best psychedelic rock album. All right, next genre, we are going into blues rock. Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced from 1967, debut studio album from The Experience. It was immediately a critical and commercial success. It would go on to sell 5 million copies in the US, due in part to Jimmy's innovative approach at songwriting, but also guitar playing. And I think that's the thing that most of us know him as, is this amazing guitarist that he was, just the jams that he could turn out. What's interesting though is this album's also rooted in psychedelic rock. It probably could have been selected for that genre as well, but it's heavily influenced by the blues-based guitar riff, and so I'm deciding to put it under that category here. It was produced by former Animals member Chaz Chandler, which I thought was kind of an interesting little twist. But the album itself is a veritable greatest hits, if you will. It's got 17 tracks total, which in and of itself is amazing, but 10 of these songs are all standout songs that that have made it to greatest hits packages, that have been played on the radio, that have been covered time and time again. Purple Haze, probably the most well-known song from him, but we also get Manic Depression, Hey Joe, Wind Cries Mary, Fire, Foxy Lady, the title track Are You Experienced, Stone Free, Highway Child, and Red House. So 10 out of the 17 tracks on this album are that amazing. But again, the rest of the tracks on this are really amazing. Now, of Jimmy's 4 albums that he recorded, he simply didn't write a bad song. Now, if he had been around much longer and didn't pass away, who knows what we would be saying about him today. But in his short time, the 4 albums that he made are just simply stellar pieces of blues rock, which is the main reason I'm choosing this album here as simply the best blues rock album. Okay, now we're going to move into glam rock, and I've chosen David Bowie, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, 1972 album. 5th studio album, also just simply known as Ziggy Stardust. Concept album and rock album about a fictional rock star that is sent to Earth as a savior to, prevent the impending apocalypse disaster that is coming. Quite the story. Actually, lots and lots of concept albums seem to be based on the same thing. David Bowie and his band, the Spiders from Mars, embodied the album's characters. And I think that's something that's a little different from most of the either glam rock or concept albums and things that are out there. But so much so, when taking on those personas, lots of people actually thought David Bowie was Ziggy Stardust. And I'm sure you can imagine being at those concerts early on and people actually calling him that as opposed to David Bowie. That has happened in other cases as well throughout the rock, world and historically and so forth. But when he decided to change, the persona, the direction of the next, albums, that really upset a lot of fans. But that was just because he had embodied it for this as part of what it was, but then he was ready to try something new. Obviously, David Bowie would go on and do so many more things than simply glam rock, but I think the biggest album he is known for, where he first broke big, is the glam rock movement, which is why I've chosen this album. Aside from, the concept and everything about it, there's some killer songs on here that have really stood the test of time. Moonage Daydream, Starman, Hang On to Yourself, which I really love. Suffragette City is on this album, which had actually been offered to Mott the Hoople, another band from that era. They ultimately decided to go with All the Young Dudes, but imagine if the tables had been turned, if they had taken Suffragette City. Would Mott the Hoople be who they are today? Who knows? So besides the glam rock sound on this album, it's also got a proto-punk feel to it. At certain times, it brings those elements into it, which makes this album more than just what it would seem on the surface, and one of the reasons I am choosing it here as simply the best glam rock album. All right, next category, genre. It's actually got 2 names. It started off as just being called soft rock, but later grew and got the title of Yacht Rock. I'm talking about Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill from 1972, their debut studio album. At the time of the album, Steely Dan was actually a band, yet later on, they would simply revolve around the duo of Donald Fagen on keyboards and vocals and Walter Becker on guitar and vocals. But the album itself also featured guitarist Jeff "Skunk" Baxter, who is a phenomenal guitar player. Really brought a big rock element to this through his lead work, and I felt was sorely missed going on when he was not part of the band. This album also encompasses sounds of course, rock, but we got jazz, folk, and pop mixed in with it, which is what helped to create that aura of, and the title of a softer rock and a yacht rock. The album itself featured 3 of the band's biggest hits, most well-known songs: Do It Again, Dirty Work, and Reelin' in the Years. And about 10 years ago, when I first looked into the band, not knowing anything about them, decided to check them out. Somebody offered me tickets to go see them. And I was like, I know the name of this band, but I don't think I know anything that they do. And I heard Reelin' in the years. I couldn't believe that I actually knew material from this band. So, never say never and think that you don't know something from a band. Always go check them out. But once I heard that, I immediately fell in love with the group and the rest of what they were doing. And part of that is why I'm leaning in towards this and selecting this album as simply the best Yacht Rock album. Okay, and the last one that we're going to talk about here is the genre of Southern rock. And of course, that's got to go to none other than Lynyrd Skynyrd. And for me, second helping their 1974 second studio album. I'm sure a lot of you could have selected the debut album, which is called Pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. I think I could have easily grabbed that one as well. I just think the songs on this album here stand out a bit more, a bit stronger than that debut album. Plus, it actually features the band's biggest hit on here, Sweet Home Alabama, that was written in response to Neil Young's song Southern Man. And, got to thank Neil for writing that, because we got one of the most killer Southern rock anthems out of it with Sweet Home Alabama. And there's a ton of other great songs. So besides Sweet Home Alabama, you get Don't Ask Me No Questions, personal favorite of mine, Working for MCA, The Ballads of Curtis Lowe, and Call Me the Breeze. Just all really good standout songs on here. And if you take the debut and you take this one, again, you simply have a greatest hits package, because so many big songs came from those first two albums. This album here, filled with the Southern charm and swagger, blues-inspired riffs, the killer triple guitar attack of the solos, one of the first bands to be doing it, Lynyrd Skynyrd. Standout piano performances from Billy Powell, which is a key element in Southern rock. This album here has it all, and is why it's my pick for Southern rock genre, simply the best album of that category. And there you go. Those are simply the best rock albums in their respective genres. Remember, as I said, I did a part 1 to this. So if you're wondering where the heck is rock, hard rock, arena rock, melodic rock, progressive rock, I already did those. So check the link for in the description for a link to that. And in future episodes, I will be moving on to other genres. I've already earmarked out episodes 3 and 4, which means I will have hit 20 different rock genres. I'm sure there's a lot more out there, and we'll have fun touching on all of those. All right, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.